What's one thing that we all have? What's one thing that every human is equipped with? An ego. Some have active egos, some have dormant egos, and some have egos that are under construction, but yet we all have an ego. We all have a sense of self where we either think we're right all the time, we think we're the best at something. It doesn't matter. Even people with the lowest of self-esteem has some portion of them that is an ego. We could have an ego in our belief system where we feel like our belief system is the only belief system that is right. That is an ego. We can have an ego within our intellect and our education that like we have all the answers. Either way, people have egos. And having an ego at sometimes can work well for you because you have to have a certain amount of confidence in yourself. You have to have a certain amount of strength in what you believe in and what you know to be true. But too much of an ego is very dangerous because too much of an ego will stunt your growth. I say that because life is ever-changing and you don't know every day. If I think back to the 18-year-old me, I thought I knew everything. And I didn't realize that I didn't know anything. I knew what I knew from experience to be fact. But outside of that, I didn't know anything. And boy, was I in for a ride. But if I can go back to that young girl, I would tell myself, you know nothing. And those gems that the wiser old adults would give me, I would have taken those. I would have really considered those things and I would have did things a lot different. But you live and you learn. And I want to talk about egos today because in our society today, there's such a spirit of narcissism everywhere. People are more and more narcissistic every day. Self-seeking, self-serving, and selfish. And a lot of it has to do with this ego that we have gained. And with this uprise of a air quote conscious community, it's even worse because now everyone thinks that they have the secret to life and they've opened up Pandora's box and they know it all and they're all knowing and etc. And although people are finding out truths every day and people are getting answers every day, no one is all knowing. And to truly become all knowing, I think at some point you have to realize that none of us are all knowing. But your ego is what's going to stop you from growing. I was in a situation I spoke briefly about being in a cult. And being in that cult, one of the mind trips was it's making you feel that you had the complete truth. They would refer to the cult as the truth. So they'd be like, oh, I'm in the truth. Oh, I'm in the truth. Oh, are you in the truth? And they would say that. And that was a code word for you to know if the person believed what you believed in. And then there was different sectors. There was different offsets of I believe this way, but I believe this way. And all I saw for years was ego bashing and ego fighting and ego bashing. And everyone's ego was so fragile that no one could be wrong and everyone had to be right. I've always been a why asker. That's why I always say things about the 5 whys. I've always asked that question, why? Because there's always a deeper reason to everything. So it was very hard for me to fully assimilate to think that I knew all the answers. I also feel like God wasn't allowing me to feel that way either. He was always keeping something open. And I remember telling people, I was in this call, I'm never going to think that this is fully the truth because if what I learned my whole life was a lie, then this could be a lie too. So I would be foolish to fall back into the same pattern that I have found the truth and nothing but the truth. So I'm going to always be ever learning, but I'm going to be wise about it. I'm not just going to take all information fed to me and be like, this is it. I use discernment. When you have an ego, you're not able to do that. When you have an ego, whatever information that you have gathered that you've convinced yourself is right and true, that's it. You're not even going to hear people. You're going to shut everything out. As soon as they say something that is off balance of what you believe in, your radar is going to go up and you're going to block them out. You're going to drown them out. And that's the most dangerous thing that any human can do, whether it's religion, education, intellect, health, anything. Because we don't know everything. And every day is literally a learning experience. I can't tell you how many times I learn something new every day from somebody, from unsuspecting people, how many times I'm influenced from unsuspected people, how many times people have opened my eyes to something new. And they don't even know it. And I don't always tell people. Sometimes I like to tell them because I think it does something to someone to realize that they're affecting people in a positive way without them even knowing, by just being them. But most of the time they don't even know how much they're affecting me. And the only reason they're doing that is because I've been able to strip my ego all the way down to almost nothing in order to be able to receive. I met a young man not too long ago, and he had shared with me that every day when he wakes up in the morning, he strips himself of his ego and of his old self. And it was very enlightening to hear this young man speak. And he was like, every day, I just strip myself back down to nothing. And then every day I get built back up. And it's a new day. It's very profound how he explained it. And I was like, this is so amazing to hear someone have this conversation and to say these things, because most people aren't doing that. Most people wake up and they put their armor of ego on and they go about their life. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who thought they had all the answers? It's like talking to a brick wall. There's nothing fruitful. There's nothing enlightening, and you can't really gain much. Even if the person has a lot of knowledge and understanding, you typically can't gain anything from that conversation because they're typically talking about themselves. They're typically talking in a matter-of-fact term and everything. My favorite word to use is "in my opinion," or "I have a theory." I love to say that because a theory isn't fact. It's a theory. It could be wrong. And your opinion is in fact. It could be wrong. Now, fact is fact. And I will fight fact all day because I'm a very logical thinker. Honestly, I use both sides of my brains, but I'm a very logical thinker. And I like to look at fact first. And then I'll explore theories and opinions and possibilities. But fact is fact, and you can't refute it. But there's some people who talk about their theories and their opinions as if it's fact. Now, of course, a theory and an opinion can graduate into a fact, but you got to do research, you have to study, and you have to really understand whatever you're speaking about. It's funny because when I was in the cult, they would do like sermons and lessons, and they would teach you some things, and very often they would have to come back and be like, oh, that was wrong what we said. But they never said it in a way that made you feel comfortable. It just made you feel like you were listening to people who were misguided and had no direction. And I always wanted them to approach it in like a way where they said up front, we're new to this, we don't have all the answers, and we may have one answer and come to a different understanding later on because this is how ever changing and we're growing every day and we're learning something new every day. So work with us because we may say something this week and it's not that we're being hypocrites or messing things up, it's just that things change. But they would never say that. They would actually be very hypocritical in their approach of bringing new information along because the ego doesn't want to say that I was wrong. But everybody knows the wisest man can admit that he's wrong. The wise man can admit that he doesn't know anything. A wise man can admit that he's always learning because there's nothing shameful about learning. There's nothing shameful about being wrong. And there's nothing shameful about making a mistake and failing. As long as you get back up. The shame is when you don't get back up. The shame is when you don't correct. The shame is when you don't keep pushing. So, there we go. But if you literally are basing everything on this ego, you can't grow. And then you start to see how it festers and grows into something even more toxic outside of just you being stagnant. When you have an ego and you don't want to admit you're wrong, you'll be willing to do whatever you can do to hide that wrong, even if that means leading other people astray. I cannot stand our 5-minute vegans. Respect to anybody who can be a vegan and who has been a vegan for years, but I used to be surrounded by people who were vegans for 5 minutes. They would promote the diet, advertise it, and shame anybody who wasn't on it. Meanwhile, they knew nothing about it. Meanwhile, they wasn't sharing with you the outbreaks, how their body was shutting down, how they were tired, how they had, decreased energy, how they were breaking out in hives, how their body had to readjust to this shock of a diet. Their body was used to being fed this, 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 and this, and now they eliminated all that and started feeding their body something new. They weren't talking about that because they wanted to show you the glamorous side. And then when they realized their body couldn't take these diets and they started eating meat, they didn't share with you that they were eating meat. They just pop up with a meat plate. Instead of being transparent and letting their ego die and saying, you know what? I'm on this diet. This is all the stuff that's happening. I do think it's amazing for my research, but this is trial and error, blah, blah, blah. No, because their ego wouldn't allow them to do that. I saw one female who did that. She used to be a natural hair vlogger. I think her name is Tony. She has 2 sisters. They're called My Natural Sisters, and they did like a lot of things with hair. She was on a vegan diet. She was so transparent, and it was beautiful. Like, she literally showed you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And she stuck it out. But she was transparent from the start to the finish. And I'm sure there's others, but this is somebody that I watch personally be very transparent. But like I said, I watched a lot of people shame people for not being vegan, but being very vague and very sneaky because it protected their ego about what that diet really was. So you got things like that. You have people who are religious leaders, and I'm not just talking about Christians. I'm talking about religious leaders from every religion who ego has them portraying something that is not true, that is false, and also has them just downing people because of their ego. The call that I was in, favorite pastime was to down every other religious group. And it was to the point where they couldn't even sit in a room with someone of a different religious group. And I was just in my head baffled, like, you know, every religion has at least 3 things in common. And I'm like, look, you should be able to sit in a room with any religious person and be able to have a decent conversation on what you agree with, and just don't even address what you don't agree with. But their egos couldn't do that. Their egos had to want to teach and force feed everybody what they believed in. And if they didn't believe it, their ego was so strong that they don't even want to deal with you anymore. They just ostracize anyone who doesn't believe what they believe in. And I'm just like, how do you learn? And they would say, we want to be the light of the world. We want to show people the right way. You can't show people the right way if you're in a box. If you have an ego that's that big, that can't be penetrated or anything or told anything, you're in a box now. You cannot shine your light from within a box. You have to be able to function out there in the world to shine your light. You have to sit amongst people who don't believe what you believe and who don't do the things that you do, and be able to be strong within your beliefs, but be a light to those people. You can't do that with a huge ego. An ego cannot exist in that, because you have to be able to have real life conversations that you can actually learn from with these people. You know? If you have a huge ego and you go to college and you sit in class and you think you know more than the professor, your grades are going to reflect. Your final, debrief of what you learned in that class is going to reflect. You're not going to have learned anything because you shut that person out. If you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship with someone, you have an ego that you know what it means to be in a relationship and you're always right, you're never going to have a fulfilling relationship because you'll never understand your partner because your ego is too big. You're not even going to want to hear them. Imagine that. Imagine the world being so vast and big and filled with knowledge and beauty and the unknown, and you're not able to experience any of it because you, as small as you are, believe that you have it all. So you literally just cut everything off and cut off all the possibilities for all these amazing experiences. Another thing is shaming people who are not there on your level yet. Yeah, people are on different levels, and sometimes it's annoying when you have to deal with someone who might not be intellectually where you are at the moment, who might be spiritually where you are. But to down a whole group of people because you feel like you're at the pinnacle of where you need to be spiritually is trash. I cannot stand the Black conscious community that loves to boss up on other Blacks because they feel like, they've reached that pinnacle of confidence and they feel like they are all knowing and they know this and they're that. And instead of reaching back humbly and pulling people up, because you got to meet people in a humble place to get them to even listen to you. Nope. They'll just be trash people and throw it in your face. And I can admit, there was a time when I was in that cult that I was this very person that I'm talking about. And let me tell you this, I didn't get anybody to even listen to me by doing that. I shut so many people out, and I turned so many people off by just having that demeanor about myself, and it was garbage. And I had to literally sit back and be like, oh my gosh. And I had to issue so many apologies. It's not even funny. Because it was pretentious, it was rude, it was egotistical, and it was just disgusting. And I had to be like, you know what? This is not what you're trying to do. This is not humble. This is not pleasing. This is really bad. And I had to realize that, and I had to go and correct myself. I had to check myself before I wrecked myself. A little old school. But, I don't want to ramble and rant, but this is really a big deal. Your ego can literally stunt your growth and literally hinder you. And then if you have an ego and you're in any form of leadership, or you have any voice that is being heard by the masses, then your ego is now a liability for everybody else. And for what? What is it for us to one day just say, I don't have all the answers, I'm open and I'm ready and willing to learn? Because literally, life is a learning experience from the moment you're born to the moment you close your eyes. You have to become a forever student. Of course, and like I said, I'm not saying go and take on everything you hear and see, but keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and always discern within your spirit and use your intuition and use your discernment, whatever you want to call it, from whatever religion you are, whatever that is, use that discernment and use wisdom. But always know that the ego shouldn't exist. An ego should not exist. Confidence and egos are two different things. Confidence, yes. Ego, no. So I would say, for a takeaway, like I said, I'm a why person. I love to ask why. I want you guys to do the 5 whys again. And what I want you to do is I want you to first think about where your ego is. Do you have one? How big it is and where it is? And what's it like where at in your life is your ego the biggest? Like, is it your ego really big when it comes to religion? Or really big when it comes to like knowledge or consciousness? Whatever your ego is big in, just time to chop it down. And you want to do the 5 whys to get to the root of that. You ask yourself why 5 times. Remember, I was this person I'm talking about that had a big ego, and it was hard to tell me anything. But now, I chop my ego down, and I'm ready and willing to learn all the time, and I find beauty in learning. And I think we all can find beauty in learning, and when we do, it's amazing. It's beauty in humility. It's beauty in being humble. It's beauty in being a student. You don't always have to be a master at everything. Eventually, yes. But take time to be a student. Take time to learn. Take time to absorb. So it was great. Again, thank you all for listening to Ponder This. So remember, ponder. Do I have an ego? And do I need to check it? Peace.